itself. And a rare lot of questions he asked me. I gave him information about my having two beats, in my business. One day to the right from our house and back again, another day to the left from our house and back again, for he's a stranger and don't know the names of places around here. And he seemed quite pleased. "Why, then, I shall be returning home tonight your way," he says, "when I thought you'd be coming in an exactly opposite direction. That's capital. I may trouble you for another lift, perhaps, but I'll engage not to fall so sound asleep again." He was sound asleep, sure. Dot, what are you thinking of? Thinking of, John? I was listening to you. Oh, that's all right, said the earnest carrier. I was afraid, from the look on your face, that I had gone rambling on so long as to set you thinking about something else. I was very near it, I'll be bound. Dot made no reply. They jogged on for some little time in silence. But it was not easy to remain silent very long in John Peerybingle's cart, for everybody on the road had something to say. Though it might only be, "How are you?" and indeed it was very often nothing else, still, to give that back again with the right spirit of cordiality required not merely a nod and a smile, but as wholesome an action of the lungs withal as a great long-winded parliamentary speech. Sometimes passengers on foot or horseback plodded on a little way beside the cart, for the express purpose of having a chat, and then there was a great deal to be said on both sides. Then Boxer gave occasion to more good-natured recognitions of and by the carrier than half a dozen Christians could have done. Everybody knew him all along the road, especially the fowls and pigs, who, when they saw him approaching, with his body all on one side, and his ears pricked up inquisitively, and that knob of a tail making the most of itself in the air, immediately withdrew into remote back settlements without waiting for the honor of a nearer acquaintance. He had business elsewhere, going down all the turnings, looking into all the wells, bolting in and out of all the cottages, dashing into the midst of the dames' schools, fluttering all the pigeons, magnifying the tails of all the cats, and trotting into the public-houses like a regular customer. Wherever he went, somebody or other might have been heard to say, "Hola, here's Boxer!" and out came that somebody forthwith, accompanied by at least two or three other somebodies, to give John Peerybingle and his wife good day. The packages and parcels for the errand cart were numerous, and there were many stoppages to take them in and give them out, which were not by any means the worst parts of the journey. Some people were so full of expectation about their parcels, and other people were so full of wonder about their parcels, and other people were so full of inexhaustible directions about their parcels, and John had such a lively interest in all the parcels that it was as good as a play. Likewise there were articles to carry, which required to be considered and discussed, and in reference to the adjustment and disposition of which counsels had to be holden to the carrier and the sender, at which Boxer usually assisted in short fits of the closest attention, and long fits of tearing round and round the assembled sages, and barking himself hoarse. Of all these little incidents, Dot was the amused and open-eyed spectatress from her chair in the cart, and as she sat there looking on, a charming little portrait, framed to admiration by the tilt, there was no lack of nudgings and glancings and whisperings and envyings among the younger men. And this delighted John the carrier beyond measure, for he was proud to have his little wife admired, knowing that she didn't mind it, that, if anything, she rather liked it, perhaps. The trip was a little foggy, to be sure, in the January weather, and was raw and cold, but who cared for such trifles? Not Dot, decidedly. Not Tilly Slowboy, for she deemed sitting in the cart on any terms to be the highest point of human joys, the crowning circumstance of earthly hope. Not the baby, I'll be sworn, for it's not in baby nature to be warmer or more sound asleep, though its capacity is great in both respects, than that blessed young Peerybingle was all the way. You couldn't see very far in the fog, of course, but you could see a great deal. It's astonishing how much you may see in a thicker fog than that, if you will only take the trouble to look for it. Why, even to sit watching for the fairy rings in the fields, and for the patches of hoar-frost still lingering in the shade, near hedges and by trees, was a pleasant occupation. to make no mention of the unexpected shapes in which the trees themselves came starting out of the mist and glided into it again. The hedges were tangled and bare, and waved a multitude of blighted garlands in the wind. But there was no discouragement in this. It was agreeable to contemplate, for it made the fireside warmer in possession, and the summer greener in expectancy. The river looked chilly, but it was in motion, and moving at a good pace, which was a great point. The canal was rather slow and torpid, that must be admitted. Never mind, it would freeze the sooner when the frost set fairly in, and then there would be skating and sliding, and the heavy old barges, frozen up somewhere near a wharf, would smoke their rusty iron chimney pipes all day and have a lazy time of it. In one place there was a great mound of weeds, or stubble burning, and they watched the fire, so white in the daytime, flaring through the fog with only here and there a dash of red in it, until, in consequence, as she observed, of the smoke getting up her nose, Miss Slowboy choked. She could do anything of that sort on the smallest provocation, and woke the baby, who wouldn't go to sleep again. But Boxer, who was in advance of them some quarter of a mile or so, had already passed the outposts of the town, and gained the corner of the street where Caleb and his daughter lived. And long before they had reached the door, he and the blind girl were on the pavement waiting to receive them. Boxer, by the way, made certain delicate distinctions of his own in his communication with Bertha, which persuade me fully that he knew her to be blind. He never sought to attract her attention by looking at her, as he often did with other people, but touched her invariably. What experience he could ever have had of blind people or blind dogs, I don't know. He never lived with a blind master, nor had Mr. Boxer the elder, nor Mrs. Boxer, nor any of his respectable family on either side ever been visited with blindness that I am aware of. He may have found it out for himself, perhaps, but he had got hold of it somehow, and therefore he had hold of Bertha too, by the skirt, and kept hold until Mrs. Peerybingle and the baby, and Miss Slowboy and the basket were all got safely within doors. May Fielding was already come, and so was her mother, a little querulous chip of an old lady with a peevish face, who, in right of having preserved a waist like a bedpost, was supposed to be a most transcendent figure, and who, in consequence of having once been better off, or of laboring under an impression that she might have been, if something had happened which never did happen, and seemed to have never been particularly likely to come to pass, but it's all the same, was very genteel and patronizing indeed. Gruffin Tackleton was also there, doing the agreeable, with the evident sensation of being as perfectly at home and as unquestionably in his own element as a fresh young salmon on the top of the great pyramid. "May, my dear old friend!" cried Dot, running up to meet her. "What a happiness to see you!" Her old friend was, to the full, as hearty and as glad as she, and it really was, if you'll believe me, quite a pleasant sight to see them embrace. Tackleton was a man of taste, beyond all question. May was very pretty. You know sometimes, when you are used to a pretty face, how when it comes into contact and comparison with another pretty face, it seems for the moment to be homely and faded, and hardly to deserve the high opinion you have of it. Now this was not at all the case, either with Dot or May, for May's face set off Dot's, and Dot's face set off May's so naturally and agreeably that, as John Peerybingle was very near saying when he came into the room, they ought to have been born sisters, which was the only improvement you could have suggested. End of section 5.